Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about our 2021 Game of the Year. Really excited to talk about this. There were three very awesome games that I played this year, and the selection was a little bit difficult, but at the end of the day, it really wasn't because there was one clear uh, game that ran away with it. Um, I thought it was going to be a lot tougher, but then I really thought about it, and it was a no-brainer. But the other two games are no slouches either. They were a lot of fun. We're going to do this a little bit differently. Like I said, we're going to look at uh, what we played throughout the year. So the very first game that I played this year of note was actually Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Torna the Golden Country. Now, this game came out a while ago. If we take a look at the back of the box, 2017. So a little bit late in this one, about 4 years ago, for Xenoblade 2, Torna the Golden Country. For those not familiar, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is actually a prequel story uh, to the standard Xenoblade Chronicles 2 on the Switch. This was a good prequel. It really kind of went into some of the background of some of the characters we didn't know a whole lot about, but were kind of referenced to in Xenoblade 2, and some of them that we were familiar with. No spoilers. Very anti spoilers. No worries there. And if I approach anything with spoilers, I will let you know. So yeah, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, again, not released during the year, but I had a lot of fun with it. I spent about maybe 50, 60 hours with this game. Not nearly the amount of time that we put into Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but a good amount of time, anyways. That sunk into this game. Story was very engaging. Still a good amount of side quests and grinding that you could do that was present in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. But yeah, a little derivative of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but that's not a bad thing. Very deep battle system and a lot of fun to play and to experience. The second game we're going to talk about, we're going to stick with the RPGs. This is the next runner-up, and this was Bravely Default 2. I thought this was actually a really great follow-up to the first Bravely Default. And for those also not familiar with the Bravely Default series, it's a little bit confusing. We had Bravely Default come out on the 3DS back, I believe, in 2015. It was a good amount of years ago, anyways. That came out on the Switch. Sorry, the 3DS. It'd be great if it came out on the Switch. They did a follow up to it, but it was a great RPG. It was a return to the classic JRPG form. With your party having a standard party of 4 characters, and you pick your job and you master the jobs, and you can mix and match the skills from the jobs. It's a lot of fun. Really enjoyed Bravely Default 2. Now, where it gets complicated is there was another game called Bravely Second. A lot of people, when they saw Bravely Default 2, said, "Oh, I already played that game on the 3DS." Bravely Second was a side story to the first Bravely Default. Bravely Default 2 has very little to do with the first one. You don't have to play Bravely Default or Bravely Second to play Bravely Default 2. It does give you a little bit of a background. If you have played them, to some of the tropes and some of the themes of the game, but other than that, you can go into this. So kind of like the Final Fantasy series, unless it's like Final Fantasy X-2 or Final Fantasy IV, the after years. The standard numbered releases, you can play them on their own. Like I said, there's some familiar things just like with the Final Fantasy series that carry over, but nothing story wise. But this has been a great game. I am still working on it. Actually, 100 and I think 20 hours in. Again, going through all the jobs and the classes, trying to make sure I master all of them, get everything. I am somewhat of a completionist. I don't go too crazy. I don't have to get everything to stop playing the game, but there's a certain level where I'm satisfied. Like, hey, I got 95% of everything. I'm good. I don't need to get every little thing because we got to move on to the next game. But yeah, Bravely Default 2. If you enjoy JRPGs, you'll like Bravely Default 2. Great follow up to the first one. If you like the first one, you'll like the second one. It was actually, I thought, better than the first one. and almost made Game of the Year for 2021 for me, but didn't quite make it. There was one other game, and I think you may know what that game is. So yeah, Metroid Dread, Game of the Year for 2021. And I think this is a lot of people's Game of the Year. I know they had the Game Awards, and a lot of people were upset that Metroid Dread didn't get Game of the Year. But yeah, this was a great return to form for Metroid. This was developed by Mercury Steam. They did the remake of Metroid 2 on the 3DS a few years ago. And you'll notice a lot of things that carried over from uh, that remake to Metroid Dread. Uh, it really felt like an amalgam of all the Metroid games. And it really also, surprisingly, this game came 20 something years later after uh, Metroid Fusion. I think it's almost 20 years, anyways. But it felt like a direct sequel. Metroid Fusion, for those not familiar, is Metroid 4, and Metroid Dread is Metroid 5. And a lot of things kind of carried over from that game. And I was kind of surprised by that. Some of the things I could have done without. Um, some of the story elements kind of ruin the flow of the game a little bit. I'm an old school gamer though, so for me, I just want to go in and I want to get lost. I want to look for secrets. I want to bomb every single wall and use the X-ray scopes for looking through, finding secrets. That was me growing up playing Metroid. But this was still awesome, awesome Metroid. Uh, when I saw this announced at E3, I was actually watching it on Complete Geek TV. They had a stream going, and I was flipping out when this got revealed. And I don't flip out too often. I'm a pretty even keel kind of guy, but when I saw Metroid Dread, I followed the original Metroid Dread story years ago. For those not familiar, also with the Metroid Dread story, Metroid Dread back in I think it was like 2005 was going to come out, I believe, for scheduled for the GameCube if I remember correctly, and it was going to be another 2D Metroid. It was going to be come right after Metroid Fusion, and then it just kind of disappeared. Um, I think there were, if I remember correctly, this is going back a ways, but there were website domains and things like that. For those data miners who are out there looking for all this stuff, looking for any leaks they can get, any leads they can get on these types of things. Even back then, there were people doing that, and there were domains, there were trademarks, there was everything for Metroid Dread, and then nothing ever happened. We never heard anything about it, and it was one of the games I was kind of like looking forward to every E3, and then eventually it was one of those things you just kind of forget about because it never happened. But when Metroid Dread got announced, I was like, oh man, finally, 2D Metroid. I know everybody's super psyched for Metroid Prime 4. I did play Metroid Prime on the GameCube. I'm not a huge fan of first person shooters. I did enjoy it. I didn't go all the way through, it got pretty close to the end, but it just wasn't the same. I thought they did do a good job of translating 2D to 3D, but it just wasn't for me. I gotta play my 2D Metroid. I gotta get lost in the corridors, find all those power ups, um, and fight those familiar bosses. Metroid Prime just felt just a little too different. But for a first-person shooter, I probably the most time I put into a first-person shooter. So I'll give Metroid Prime that. But yeah, Metroid Dread sounds like it might be the last 2D Metroid. They're saying this is the conclusion of the story. We'll see how true that is. But considering this took almost 20 years to come out, that might be true. But who knows? There could be some other type of Metroid to come. But talking about Metroid Dread, yeah, this was it's a pretty long Metroid game for your first playthrough, I think, especially if you're trying to find all the energy tanks, find all the missile tanks, and all the secrets in the game. I am proud to say I got over 90% completion on my first playthrough without any help, and I think I knew where everything else was, but there are some puzzles in the game for people who've played some of these Metroid games. You'll know about the speed booster puzzles. And some of the speed booster puzzles in Metroid Dread are insane. It requires precision, pinpoint accuracy to get it just right. And so I was like, I don't need an extra couple of missiles. I'm good to get along in the game. The bosses, phenomenal bosses, very challenging. The bosses, actually, a lot of them reminded me more of Mega Man bosses than Metroid bosses. The patterns were very reminiscent of the Mega Man games, where you first get to a robot master, and you, especially if you don't know what their weakness is, and you don't know what their pattern is yet. The patterns are very distinguishable, after you play through that boss 10, 20 times, especially the last boss of this game. Was a lot of fun, very satisfying. Took me probably an hour or two to beat. Just having to learn the different phases of the boss, the different patterns, find out what's hurting the boss, what's not hurting the boss. Again, staying away from spoilers. But you'll have a lot of fun if you enjoy a good challenge. Old school challenge, Metroid Dread will be right up your alley. Now, if you're more of a modern gamer, you need to have everything explained to you and your handheld. You might not enjoy this game. And I don't say that disparagingly. I understand that's another way that Nintendo and a lot of other companies have gotten more gamers into the market, because when they say NES hard, NES hard's a real thing. And that's how I grew up, and I enjoy the challenge of a game. While I'm playing the game, if you're in the same room, you might not believe that, but I do. I do enjoy it, despite whatever flows out of my mouth while I'm fighting a boss and being killed for like the 20th time. But yeah, the bosses were probably the highlight of this game for me because they were so difficult. The Emmys, as everybody knows, the robotic creatures in the game, they are what bring the dread into Metroid Dread. When you encounter an Emmy and it's like, hey, run, it's fight or flight. It's flight. Completely flight with the Emmys. But each one was a little bit different. They spaced them out pretty well, so it wasn't too overwhelming where you're like, oh man, I'm sick of these Emmys. There were just enough of them and spaced out just appropriately enough to make it so they didn't overstay their welcome, and they didn't get the mechanic didn't get stale. I got lost a couple times. I remember there was one specific time I probably wasted 3 hours trying to figure out where to go. I'd love to hear in the comments if you got lost in this game and where you got lost. I got lost in a specific water part of the game. And when I found it, I felt really dumb, but it was a pretty well hidden doorway, I'll say, without spoiling too much. But yeah, Metroid Dread, great power-ups. If you play the 2D Metroid games, you will love this game. Not quite up to the standard of Super Metroid, but it's very close. There is a little bit of hand-holding in it, and a little bit of they kind of point you in a linear direction in a way. You can still backtrack sometimes, and sometimes you can't. But they definitely set you on a path. And Super Metroid did that a little bit too, but a little more freedom in Super Metroid. And that's just one of the things missing from Metroid Dread is the freedom. Freedom is limited a little bit in comparison when you look at Super Metroid. That said, the map is ginormous. There's a lot of different areas. Like I said, easy to get lost. But there are shortcuts that you can take eventually to help you get around. But yeah, it's there's a lot of one-way tickets where you go one way and then you're trapped and you can't go back. That can get a little bit annoying when you're first going through the area. Okay, but when you have to you're looking for items, you're looking for secrets, and then you can't go back, and you have to go all the way back around. It's a huge time waster. But eventually you'll learn the map and you'll learn, what blocks you can't go through, which ones you can at that point in time. And clearly there's people out there who can beat this game in just a couple hours. And that's how you get the good endings. So yeah, Metroid Dread, my 2021 game of the year. The visuals, fantastic. The music, very atmospheric. Not quite as memorable as some of the older Metroid games, but some of those Metroid tunes are there. The gameplay is phenomenal. The controls were very good. The only problem I had with the controls was just there's a mechanic when you're fighting the enemies and you have to do a little bit of aiming. I felt that was just a little bit off and a little bit hard to control. And that might have just been me though, not doing it right. But that's a very small knock against the game. The ending is phenomenal. Like most Metroid games, it's a high octane race to the finish type of game, and yeah, you'll enjoy it. Definitely stick with it. Don't look up the game. Don't look up the spoilers. You'll want to be surprised at the end because it's a really cool way to end the Metroid series. So yeah, Metroid Prime. Listen to me. No, definitely not Metroid Prime. Metroid Dread. Metroid Dread, 2021 game of the year. I'd love to know what your game of the year is. I want to know if you played any of the games I mentioned today. Bravely Default 2, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Torna, The Golden Country, or Metroid Dread. Did you play these games? Did you enjoy them? After watching this, maybe do you think about playing these games? So whatever you want to say in the comments, let me know. I'd love to read anything that you have to say. And again, thanks for watching. We're going to have a follow-up to this video in a few days. We're going to be going over, I have the special edition for Metroid Dread, and we'll be taking a look at the Metroid art book. It's still sealed. I still haven't opened it up. We're going to open it live on our video and experience this book for the first time together. So I really look forward to experiencing this piece of history for Metroid. I'm not exactly sure what's all in the book. I can't remember. So that's going to be very fresh for me to go through, and I look forward to it. And I hope you do too. All right. We'll see you next time.